Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be with you here today, February 8th of 2022, to talk about something that is as infuriating as it is insane. It's something that we shouldn't have to be talking about. It shouldn't exist, and yet it does. And it's because the news media is so corrupt that you don't know about this. And when I say they're corrupt, I mean on the same levels that the American news media failed to report that 479 Americans were abandoned in Afghanistan, not 85. That the unemployment rate in January increased to 4%, something they forgot to put into their headlines. That we are seeing the highest rate of inflation in nearly half a century. These are the things that the news media won't tell you about, and they have truly outdone themselves with this news item we're going to speak about. But first, we do want to mention if this is the first time that you are seeing our channel, we welcome you. We thank you for being part of our audience. We do long-form political commentary here, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you. We reach out on YouTube, Facebook, DLive, all the social media that the internet overlords will allow to be able to speak with you directly because we believe in your First Amendment right. Regardless of what country you're in, we believe in your right to speak about the issues that matter to you. And so every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we invite you to join us to add your voice, your chats, your tweets, and your calls from anywhere in the world to tell us what you think. So why are we upset today? What could be so upsetting that we would be at a loss for words? Quite honestly, it's the fact that when we went to sleep last night at 2:30 in the morning, we saw the headline that came from only 2 news sources, and no one else in the United States was covering it. And we thought it couldn't be true. And we had to see more information, but we went to sleep and we decided to look through the information and try and understand what's really happening. And the fact is that initially, for the first 18 hours, you could not find this story anywhere unless you went to the Daily Mail, the United Kingdom, or you had to go to the Washington Free Beacon to be able to find this story. For over 18 hours, no one would tell you this. In fact, it's only just beginning to gain traction in the news media, even though 18 hours ago, this was breaking news. Now, you may say, well, Mike, what is this all about? The Biden-Harris administration, under the guise of racial equity, has decided to take $30 million in taxpayer funding to provide, there's no other word for it, crack pipes and needles to drug addicts. Taxpayer money. Because it's about racial equity. It's about making sure that they are being fair and to coddle drug users. This is an amazing story, and it's mind-blowing because it's also a violation of federal law. And so this shouldn't happen. And this is a story that has not been trending, and you have great difficulty finding it. This is the chart from Google Trends. You virtually cannot find this story. It is not trending on Twitter. And as I said, up until just an hour ago, the news media would not touch this story. But it is true that the Biden administration has decided to put $30 million into a grant to allow 25 locations across the United States to be able to provide drug paraphernalia to addicts. And they will particularly focus on areas with racial equity, those areas that serve Blacks and Hispanics, people of color. because that's fair and that's good. We have to make sure that people who want to use drugs are able to use those drugs. And so we're going to give them the money to do so. This is an incredible story. And the first place to truly break the story was the Washington Free Beacon. This is a $30 million grant program to provide smoking kits, otherwise known as crack pipes, as well as hypodermic needles for intravenous drug users. And the applicants for the grants are prioritized if they treat a majority of underserved communities, including African Americans and LGBTQ plus persons. This has come from HHS in the United States. This is real. This is after the failure of programs in San Francisco and Seattle and Louisville, Kentucky, and the state of Maryland. In fact, in the state of Maryland, the Sergeant Clyde Boatwright, president of the Maryland Fraternal Order of Police, has stated, if we are looking at a more preventative campaign as opposed to an enabling campaign, I think it will offer an opportunity to have safer communities with fewer people who are depending on these substances. Think about it. Because this is all from the American Rescue Plan. That's right, that plan that you're being told by the Biden administration is helping you. It's supposed to be supporting you, even as inflation goes to 7%, even as 479 to up to as many as 2,000 Americans were abandoned in Afghanistan, even as the State Department under the Biden-Harris administration has abandoned Americans in the Ukraine, telling them to figure out their own way out before a war starts and bombs drop on American children trying to escape that country. This is the American Rescue Plan. This is about the Biden-Harris administration. This is about equity. Because this is what the reality of equity is. It is programs that are misguided in every single step of the way. Now, you may think, well, Mike, that's just not fair. It's not real. Again, the story is only now just starting to break, 18 hours after the fact. And the news media is downplaying this. They don't want you to think about this story. The actual study, as we will show you right here, this is the study from the Department of Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It is the 2022 Harm Reduction Program. This is supposed to reduce the harm to American citizens. And it is doing that by providing crack pipes, otherwise known as safe smoking kits and supplies, drug paraphernalia. It will also provide syringes, needles to intravenous drug users. This is $30 million of your money. This is taxpayer money. This is money that the government is spending, and it's spending it to violate the law. Now, you may think, Mike, you're just being hyperbolic here. That's just too much. No, it is 21 U.S. Code 863, drug paraphernalia. It is unlawful for any person to sell or offer for sale drug paraphernalia. It is unlawful for any person to import or export drug paraphernalia. The United States government is offering this. Now, the way around this, how they can avoid the legality is, well, they're not saying it's something that they are selling. It's been paid for by taxpayers, and they are just giving it away. They're just giving it to drug dealers and drug addicts across the United States. There's no money being exchanged. The money has already come from you. So that's how they get around the law on a technicality, but the whole point is not to increase the net amount of drug paraphernalia. We don't want to increase the number of needles and number of crack pipes that are available to drug addicts to help reduce the number of drug addicts. In fact, if we look at this, we see from the Department of Justice the entire discussion about drug paraphernalia, including pipes, metal, wooden, acrylic, glass, stone, plastic or ceramic, water pipes, roach clips, miniature spoons, bongs. This is all what the government is supposed to be stopping because it helps to promote and is used in crack cocaine, crystal meth, fentanyl, heroin, LSD, marijuana, methadone, methamphetamines. Do we need to keep going through the list of drugs that are being promoted? That drug addicts are being coddled and enabled to continue their drug usage, not to stop it. If you were in California and you tried to do the exact same thing that is being promoted by HHS, by the Biden-Harris administration, you would be arrested. That's under H&S Code 11364.5 and drug paraphernalia. And in fact, if you were in New York State, as another example, well, that could fall under New York State Code Section 220.5, criminal using drug paraphernalia in the second degree. So this is a big deal. In fact, we know that as of November 17th of 2021, over 100,000 people in the United States died from drug overdoses, from heroin, from methamphetamines, from cocaine, and other such drugs. That's an increase of 28% over the 78,000 people who died in 2020. So we're seeing an increase, a growth, which has many reasons why it may have happened, partially because of the pandemic and beyond. But at a time that we are seeing more and more people die from fentanyl and heroin and opioids and so many other drugs, this is the time that the Biden-Harris administration decide, well, the best thing we can do is to give more drug paraphernalia away, that we should make it easier for drug addicts to be able to take these drugs and to overdose on them. Does that make any sense to anybody? We know that as of, and this is reported by CNBC, CNBC has stated, as of February 8th, this morning, drug overdoses cost $1 trillion to the United States a year. $1 trillion as a consequence of drug overdoses. As they are increasing, they have reached epidemic levels. They have broken through all other past records. Over 100,000 people, costing $1 trillion a year. And the answer from the Biden-Harris administration is, well, let's spend $30 million of taxpayer money to promote and enable drug addiction by giving away glass pipes and syringes, needles, for intravenous drug use. And let's emphasize and focus that on people of color, African Americans, Hispanics, and others, and the LGBTQ, because that's equity. That's the best thing we could possibly do right now. The thing that really gets me, though, is at this time, again, and I will do this as an update while I'm here with you recording this, this is not being talked about. If you look at the Google Trends, how many people are searching for this? How many people are aware that this is happening? At this moment, we see that nobody is talking about this. This story is suppressed. It's not being exposed to you. On Twitter, we mentioned, I'm amazed that Biden isn't getting American coverage for his effort to support racial equity by providing taxpayer-funded crack pipes, and I'm sure the meth crackhead vote is untapped and will make a difference in the 2022 midterms. Quite simply put, the only reason I can imagine that this isn't something that is being covered by CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, the major mainstream news media, the New York Times, why aren't they covering this? Because they know that the American people do not approve, that the American people do not believe that at a time when over 100,000 people are dying because of drug overdoses, this is not the time to decide to enable more drug use. That their taxpayer dollars are better spent than trying to enable drug usage. That's just a fact. Now, I understand people like Eric Adams may not get that, because Eric Adams is a pragmatic progressive. And in his pragmatic progressivism and his promotion of veganism, we've seen that Eric Adams believes that being addicted to cheese is the same thing as being addicted to cocaine. It's not my words. This is Eric Adams who said that. And perhaps if you have that belief that cheese is as bad as cocaine, is as bad as methamphetamines, is as bad as fentanyl and crack, well, then maybe you would think this is a great idea. That may be pragmatic progressivism. I'm not a progressive. I don't think progressivism is pragmatic, especially when it's providing crack pipes and drug and needles to drug addicts at a time that we are watching more overdoses than we have ever seen before. And this is affecting our youth and our nation and costing us $1 trillion, as well as the cost in lives for so many people. And up here in upstate New York, we know that cost very, very well. I'm insulted. I'm angry. I don't know which part of this is more aggravating to me. That the Biden administration is doing this, or that the major news media is hiding this from the general public. That this story is going to be swept under a rug and you aren't supposed to remember it in a week. In a week, they'll be moved on to another story. This harm prevention will take place and drug addicts will be enabled in their ability to overdose. And those that survive will have the Biden-Harris Democratic Party to thank for their drug addictions. And maybe, if they're still alive in November, they will then vote. And they'll vote for the guys who helped them, that saved them the money of buying a new crack pipe, who saved them the money of getting a new needle, who enabled them to safely continue their drug addiction, which increases the amount of crime in the United States, which increases the cost of health care in the United States, which increases the net sorrow and sadness in the United States for so many families and friends of these drug addicts. Perhaps you think this is a great idea. Maybe you believe that the best way to deal with drug addiction is to enable it. Maybe you believe that a loss of a human life is worse than any of the crimes they may do because of their drug addiction, because of the cost of trying to take care of their health because of their drug addiction. Maybe you think that that's the most humane thing. And that's an argument that can be made, and that's fair. I don't agree. I think it's wrong. And I think the major news media knows this. The Biden-Harris administration are quite aware of this. And that's why a story that had to be broken overseas in the United States has been avoided by the mainstream news media, because they know Americans will reject this. That this may be a victory for the Biden-Harris administration and Democrats in getting votes from the drug-addicted voter base in November, but the average American will hold them accountable. Perhaps you think I'm unfair, but I believe that if we see the number of individuals overdosing and dying in the United States increases from the 100,000 individual level that we have seen in November, if we see the cost goes above the $1 trillion that we are spending now to take care of those drug overdoses, because HHS, under the direction of the Biden-Harris administration and the American Rescue Plan, the idea of equity, if that causes an increase in those things, yeah, I hold that on Democrats. I hold that against the Biden-Harris administration, and I think you should too. But I want to hear what you think. Do you think the news media should be covering this story more? Do you think there's a reason why they won't cover this story? How do you feel about your taxes being used in this manner? And should this be an example for the rest of the world? Should England, Canada, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, should the rest of the world adopt the same ideas as the United States and provide for crack pipes and needles for continued drug use amongst all of their citizens as well? No matter what you think, we hope that on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you will join us in our live stream to comment on this and other stories that are affecting us all across the world. We thank you for your time, and we hope you'll be well.